You know, crazy stuff. I teach a class at USC at the Viterbi School, and the first thing I tell the kids in the class is I say, you know, when you join a big team, when you graduate, you're going to join a team of 160, 200 people. You go to Blizzard, you go to EA, you're going to join these massive teams, and you're going to be a specialist because there's a lot of times they need someone to just do something like rigging, or you got to do a tools programming specific thing. But right now is your chance to change the world. Right now, you guys can do something like a portal, and you guys can turn that into something amazing. And so I always tell everybody that I meet, when we talk about casual anything, I think we're not anything close to casual. We are in something that's like the world is where we are the most creative. This is the place, this is the domain where we can break the rules. We can break out of the strata of all the games that we do. And I'm excited about that all the time. I've been in the industry forever. I'm an old man on the mountain, I guess you could say. I've been since EA, 1987, when it was like 70 people and Trip was still in the company, to, oh man, I did a stint at Crystal Dynamics. You guys maybe know I was creative director at Naughty Dog for 10 years, worked with the talented team at Naughty Dog. I was at Blizzard for 2 years on Overwatch, and then a man met me by the name of John Hankey, who was at Google at the time, and we met at Trader Vic's, and we had a few drinks, and I think it was the drinks were the key. And he says, I've got all this Google map data. Why don't we make the world into a game? And so that's what we started thinking about, is how in the world we'll be able to take the entire world and turn it into a game. So now for the obligatory attention opening getting, because you got something to wake you guys up here. Oh wait, sorry, this is the wrong one. Okay, free money, that'll work every time. Free money. So you don't have to look right now, you can look later, you don't want to look greedy, but there are 3 $1 bills taped underneath some of your seats out there, and there's one $20 bill under one seat out there. I'm not kidding, it's real. So if you guys want to look, nobody's going to judge you. If you reach underneath, it'll be taped underneath. Someone right in the middle there might want to look. There's a couple possibilities right there. You guys can look later. If you don't find it, some cleaning crew people are going to be made very happy later today. That's fine too. Well, why did I take this point? What's the point about this? Why do we care about this? Well, location matters. Ah, someone found the 20. Location, you picked a good spot. See, you're in the location that matters. Location matters. Where we sit, what we do, where we congregate, how we interact is so important in life. It's so important, I think we almost don't pay attention to it because it's so ubiquitous and so important in our lives. Location matters so much. Where we live, where we eat, where we play, where we travel, where we go, where we don't go, where we try to stay away, right? Where people go to get away, secret places you don't necessarily want to share with everybody else. Places we know well, but we only think we know. We think we know, and then we find there's something secret about it. And places you want to visit. So what we do at Niantic is really, this whole idea is that movement equals discovery. It also happens to equal endorphins, which is really good for a lot of people, and I'll talk about that later. So can we make the world into a game, as I talked to you guys about? This was the big question that John Hankey threw out to the team, and we started working on this process. So we all started on the couch. I came from Sony Computer Entertainment, where the couch was where you played your games. That's what you did. And in fact, the first year, he had to convince me that people wanted to actually get outside and run around and actually spend some energy. But the time-honored traditions of role-playing, of LARPing, you guys have seen a lot of this stuff where the college game Assassin, many of you may have played. I mean, this was the stuff that drove us. And this idea was that, can we maybe turn the world into a holodeck? And if we could do that, what can we do in this world? And we saw that really the isolation and artificial couch-dependent side of gaming was kind of where we'd been. And we were talking about something entirely new. It was a whole new category. So that's what we started working on. So the world is a game board. So we started thinking about this. Well, how can locations matter? And how do we make movement a key component to the play? And you guys have probably seen some of this stuff already, but I'm just going to go over sort of where we started. Exploration, discovery, and surprise. In our real lives, we love that every day. But how can you make the game also do that? So we set out and we created this game called Ingress. This is actually one of the original whiteboards early on in the offices talking about working on portals and concepts and spaces and locations. And this became this game of control. It was territorial control with sort of an espionage overlay. And believe it or not, if you actually look into the lore and the story, there's a little bit of Cthulhu underneath of this too, this dark underbelly of the world, which is this secret sort of side, the dark places and the shadows of the world. Here's an example of one of the early paper prototypes. This was our second paper prototype that we did. We actually mapped out the entire area of San Francisco and said, okay, where can we put down portals? What would be locations people would want to visit? Why would they want to be these? Not places out in nowhere, by the way, but places that you really care about. And we started thinking about what that meant. Well, portals are locations, we thought, of human creative interest. It was sculptures, it was murals, it was art, it was cool architecture. Those are the kind of places that people tend to be gravitating towards, and they get some kind of emotional response from. And what was really special about that was John Henke was a big fan of this idea that, you want people to get out and discover the secrets in your city, in your neighborhood. And once you do get outside and you disconnect from the colostomy bag and you pull the drip pan off and you go outside and you start to care a little more because, oh man, I didn't know this cool mural was down by my park. And wow, I didn't know there's this awesome statue down there. This is really cool. And then you care more about your community and everything becomes a little more interesting that way. So you guys have played Ingress. How many of you guys have actually played the game or seen the game, know anything about it? So this became a game that where you basically could visit portals, which were locations. Players could submit pictures with geotags, and they could create these locations. We would curate that, so we had all these interesting creative places that were pouring in from all over the world. You captured fields by connecting these portals together to create territory, so it became this game of field capture. And as the players would move around, they started discovering these hidden treasures all over. And then it got really interesting, because the game really had only a few features. So we started pushing really hard on what this meant. Like, what can we do to augment the gameplay? You had the human interest, you had sculptures, murals, you had visiting portals, and the field capture. And you see this right here. This is an example of London where people were capturing fields and they were basically battling for control of the area. And the population underneath of those fields was the score that you had. So you capture a high population area, you got a higher score. You got a lower population, you got a lower score. And these bigger giant fields would capture more territory. We had resistance and enlightened, and agents had a secret identity. Then we said, can we make this game really social, because we literally sat in a room with Google lawyers over our shoulder saying, do we want people meeting in the real world? Isn't there issues with privacy, safety, concern about this stuff? I mean, do people really want to meet? Maybe they don't. We've kind of been in a world where it's gotten a little scary these days in some of the places you've seen with riots and just this general feeling that the world is kind of a scary place at turn in places. Well, it turns out everybody wants to meet up. We started having these unbelievable player events where thousands and thousands of players would show up, and they couldn't wait to play this game. This is an example in Pasadena. This was in Yokohama. I think it was 10,000 people, I believe, at this one. They wanted to meet, they wanted to make friends, and they wanted to create community. And the community became so intense that people were getting married. We were getting people that were getting permanent tattoos. And I'm telling you, it started to become a pretty heavy issue for us. When someone gets a tattoo of your game, you don't think you're going to turn your servers off anytime soon, right? At that point, you're kind of committed at that point. So 20 million installs later, we have Ingress Prime has been announced recently, as you guys know. We're still working on this. We have this huge, cool database of world locations. And that became such a piece of this. These really are this massive geostore of places people want to meet and locate. So that was the result of Ingress. So let me talk about some of the reasons why it worked. So we were an early mover in GeoMobile, which obviously matters a little bit. I think that has a lot to do with some of the early stuff, because we were definitely there early. But like I said, with the tech limitations, we started making this commitment early on that the social side of this game had to be where all of the magic happened, because we were trying to fill in for some of the feature issues that were challenging at the time. As you guys know, massive challenge to do anything mobile. You got ping rates, you've got data plans, you've got different specs for different phones. You've got so many complications that go into this process. There's a lot of technical limitations right now. Coverage, latency, all of that. So we started talking about meetups and first Saturdays and making it more social. And it became this amazing thing where people were showing up and they would have their own clothes and their costumes and their flags, and they'd have their own town version of the resistance group, their enlightened resistance San Francisco, enlightened Seattle. These guys would create their own groups. And it all became this organic thing. And we started this thing called the Ingress Update, which you guys may have seen on YouTube. And it started becoming this moment where people could get their 15 minutes of fame. We had agents showing up and doing these amazing things, and then we would film that, and we'd throw that up on YouTube, and people would get to show everybody their excitement, their commitment to the projects. And it became this really neat thing where it kind of fed itself. And of course, we also had the augmented reality story, this ARG that we were playing along in the background. If you guys have read any of that stuff, with a lot of interesting hidden codes and all kinds of things all over the world. And it became more than just a game. It became an experience. It became a lifestyle. We encourage players to be creative. We've done that. We did some events where people would show up and, kind of like Burning Man, they would make these installations that were just amazingly creative. And it was like this idea, if you build it, they will come. And that's exactly what happened with Ingress. People were doing field art where they started doing these amazing art pieces on screens. They would actually create fields to create art that then they could show photographs of. Some of these things became almost like issues of unity. We had people creating fields across the Palestinian territories into Israel and causing these unity things, talking about the borderless idea of unity and people, and that it's not about borders, it's about people. It became really moving. And then something really crazy happened. Pokemon Go. You guys know this story. It was a new game, but the enthusiasm and the engagement and the player activity was just as exciting. You had people showing up in these costumes, people that were just so fascinated by this world. And we had decided we were going to make tracking more important. So we were going to say, okay, let's make actual environment matter. So we had the ability to actually parse map data and say, okay, if you're in a grassy area, grass Pokemon can show up. If you're near water, water Pokemon can show up. And for the first time, the geo-mobile aspect of it started to really mean even more than just the location. It meant the type of place it was. It meant the environment itself. And that became a magical aspect of augmented reality as well. And the game became this idea that you turn it on, and every time you turned it on, there was a little surprise. You'd have something pop up that maybe you hadn't seen before, maybe something you hadn't collected before. And again, it was extremely social. And then, as you guys may have seen some of the things that happened in that crazy summer, the Dallas Mavericks took photographs, augmented reality photographs, in their locker room of Pokemon showing up. This stuff just went crazy viral. It was on Good Morning America. It just suddenly became this thing. And we suddenly realized that the social sharing aspect, again, was the glue. The game was fun. Ingress is fun. But the glue of showing, sharing, and experiencing it together in that shared augmented reality space, where augmented reality becomes a shared space people can all kind of see and share together, is what made this magic. And you guys know the rest is history. We had just ridiculous numbers in the Guinness World. It's insane. Today, it's 800+ million installs. Just this last November, we had November, the Global Catch Challenge. 3.6 billion Pokemon caught in 7 days, which is just it's an astounding number. And more importantly, tens of billions. We've even actually, the numbers now, it's almost like when you remember the old McDonald's thing where they used to say how many billions served? Well, we're stopping even keeping track of the number right now at this point publicly, but tens of billions of kilometers walked. So to put that in perspective, you guys, it's 7.5 billion kilometers to Pluto. So Pokemon players have walked to Pluto and back, and they're still going. That's a lot of endorphins. And we get calls and phone and letters of people, I lost 20 pounds playing this game. I have a child who's never been able to go outside, who's had issues, who's now outside playing with friends for the first time. It's just, some of the stories are so moving. And again, it's the game is the access, but then it's the social experience around it. This is an example just right up the street at Disneyland. We actually, at the World Championships at the Convention Center, we released a legendary that wasn't around, and within just hours, thousands of people showed up. The people movement of this is amazing. You can put people anywhere and see this motion and this energy reaction to this game as soon as it happens. So let's talk about some of the reasons why it works. It's easy to play, and some of this stuff is obvious to you guys, but never lose sight of it. It's so easy to play for any age. This picture right here is actually really near and dear to my heart. The little boy on the left is my son, Aiden. He's 6. He's level 34. His grandmother to the right is 74. She's a maxed out level 40. So it covers all the generations. She plays this game probably more than even my son plays this game. It's an amazing thing that and by the way, my wife plays it. She's a level 42. I had a lot of games in my career, and she never played any of my games, ever. Uncharted, she's like, yeah, it's cute. Yeah. Pokemon Go, boom. She's like all over this game, level 40. She's higher than I am in this game. So throw mechanic is simple, but it's not too simple. And you know what I mean by that? There's a skill mechanic to it. You can do it, but you can get better at it. And you can, if you don't pay attention, you can actually miss. There's bite-sized pieces of gameplay. And this is about the most important thing you can think of in terms of casual. Bite-sized, small, 5 minutes in, 5 minutes out. I'm standing in line at the grocery store. I'm waiting for the doctor. Get me in, get me out. I don't want to have to spend a lot of time on this. And then battling is a selective loop. You don't have to battle in this game. And I think that's a key component to this, because we realize that there's a lot of players who just don't want to be competitive in that direct sense. This game has a capture mechanic that's more about just enjoying the capture without having to worry about the competition. In a weird way, you're competing with yourself in that sense. And battling and all that, and that's a huge part of Pokemon's universe, was something we pushed into a little bit on the side. We said, we don't have to have battling up front and center. We don't have to make that the most important thing going on. And I think that made the game more accessible and made people less intimidated to get out there in the world and interact with each other. So we have a saying that we use at Niantic. It's adventures on foot with others. And It's a core mission, and movement is key in this game. As you guys know, you have to move to you have to move to hatch eggs. Obviously, going around to get some Pokemon stops and gyms, you got to move just like in Ingress. This stuff really is important. You have buddies, and you can actually get candy for moving. Movement, movement, movement. And again, one of these things that I can't explain it, but it's one of those, it's accidental discovery of places and information, and accidental exercise is all very powerful. And I think it's part of the reason why people finish playing the game, they feel good, and they may not even know why. And that's a good thing. So it really brought this real-world gaming space to a new place of shared space. So everybody was able to share this space. And it's, by the way, as we know, AR is getting only better. With Kit and Core, we're talking about all kinds of new things you can do. And you guys know, when you look at Magic Leaps and you look at all the stuff that's coming down the pipe, where the world is going with this is the true holodeck. If you guys have ever watched the game with Michael Douglas, I mean, whenever I lose my way in gaming in this segment, it's all about this idea of the world is a game, and all the players are in it, and everybody's able to do whatever they want. And they're sharing that space. And it's not virtual lockout, it's augmented attachment. Everybody's involved and everybody's sharing. And that's the future of this, and this is where we're headed. As you know, collection is a powerful human emotion. So within that compulsion, it's pretty powerful. And when you actually link that with geolocation and real-world activity, and now weather, in the newer version of the game, it's anywhere, anytime gaming, and that, again, there's something incredibly compulsive about this idea of collecting and wanting to collect the whole group. And the collection domain continues to grow because we release new generations. You have even more Pokemon to collect. So it's become this continuous, wonderful thing where people just can't wait to get the next set. And again, the factions showed up. They come out there and they're all dressed up and they've got their flags and they've got their, I haven't seen any tattoos yet, but they've got a lot of the same energy. And we're not even pushing as hard on that because we don't want the competitive side of this to be too intense. They're still showing up as excited as ever. One of the things I think is really powerful is the lure mechanic. And as you guys know, you can put a lure on a Pokestop, and that actually increases the ability for other Pokemon, it draws other Pokemon in, and it lures them to you. When I first knew we had a special game is when I was at a park that first summer, and I was standing there with a bunch of people that were just they were all strangers. And somebody ran up and said, "Hey, who put the lure up on the Pokestop?" And I said, "Oh, it was me." I said, "Oh, cool, thanks." And he high-fived him. They didn't even know each other. And they were so happy. It was like, I'm giving of myself to you. I'm giving a lure to you and sharing this experience. And everybody was so happy to see that. And I think one of the real successes in Pokemon was this idea that at that moment, when we had these 2 summers, the world had become a scary place for some people. And all of a sudden, here was this bright, fun, happy game saying, get out, meet people, give people a chance. Throw up a lure to help somebody else. Share stuff, share your ideas, share your capture. And there's a Pokemon up the street right here, go get it. That's exactly the kind of thing that opened up the feeling of like, the world isn't a scary place. The world is a happy place. And if you give people a chance, you have something you can share with one another. And the last thing I think is really important, and this is something for all of you who are working the business side of this, the monetization challenge for us was, we didn't want to, especially with a game at this range of age, we didn't want a game that had a ton of monetization attacks in it. We didn't want a paywall system that was so obvious and it was in your face. We didn't want any kind of baiting or any kind of begging, but we knew it had to be in the core loop. But Pokemon is really, in a sense, the monetization is in the core loop, but if you actually play the game, if you guys have had an experience with it, you do not need to spend money if you don't want to. I know a lot of people are very proud of the fact that they haven't spent a penny in Pokemon, and they're high level. You can do it. And it's not like you have to grind forever either to do it. And so we're very proud of that idea that the monetization is successful, as you guys know, but it wasn't by putting false walls up. It wasn't like forcing you to either grind and pay and feel the pain or not. I think it's actually a nice balance in how they do that. Of course, there's also the possibility it was Russian influence as to why Pokemon was successful. As you guys can see here, we even made CNN coverage, so that was priceless. Pokemon Go was mentally manipulated by Russians. I thought that was kind of fun. So what's next? So augmented reality technology, you guys know, is continuing to improve, and the promises are getting brighter and brighter every day. I'm more excited than ever. Pokemon Go 2018, a ton of stuff in the works for you guys. You can't talk about it, but you guys will be excited. Ingress Prime, wait till you see what's going on with Ingress. It's going to be amazing. And of course, Harry Potter Wizards Unite, which is also something coming down. But I want to just leave you guys with this theory about this, which is, it is about the game. And you better make fun mechanics that have core compulsion loops. And if you want to make money, you better have some monetization that's smart but not aggressive. But it's about the people. It's absolutely 100% about the people. And just like when you go to a sports event, and it's the spectacle of the people showing up that's half the fun. Team win or lose. If you're a Chicago Cubs fan, you don't care before. You didn't care if they won. You just wanted to go to the game and enjoy it with friends and like-minded people. It's all about the social. So when you're building a game, build that social side of it. And don't just throw ideas like, oh, it's social. Really figure out a way to get the players engaged, ask for their creativity, ask for their enthusiasm. Let them self-organize, because I'm telling you, you should see the self-organization going on in Pokemon Go right now. The legendary raid system is unbelievable. People on Discord, it's just unbelievable. They are running that game. They are professionals, basically, running that game, and that's what they do. They're so committed to the game, and I just love it. I mean, I don't know if you guys have gone on a raid. Have you guys been on a raid yet? They will literally have raid coordinators who show up and say, okay, Instinct over here, Valor over here, because you get Pokeball, you get premier bonuses if you get the most hits on the legendary. So they literally raid out in separate groups. They self-organize so that they all get the best shot at the legendary when they win. That's just fan commitment. And that's what we're so excited about. So that's all I got for today. Not a lot more than what you probably already know, but any questions you guys have?
Nicole Lazaro, and I was great talk. I really am a huge fan, from the initial announcement of Ingress, to today. I was curious, as as a team on the forefront of AR technology, if you had a wish for like a new feature or new capability that would add the most fun to the world of AR games, what might that be? That's a great question. That's a very good question. Well, Phil, our chief technologist, always talks about augmented reality has a tyranny of the eyes. People think that eyes are the thing. And, again, this is one of those things everybody else I'm going to leave it out there for all of you, but obviously audio is a powerful emotional mover, right? And fully in movies, we were just talking about this earlier. Movies, audio and soundtrack is almost everything in the emotional content. And it's often the caboose in video games. It was even the caboose in a lot of games. On Uncharted, we worked really hard at it. We went to Skywalker Sound and we worked on it. But often it's the caboose. It's like, okay, now we got all these features, let's add some sounds to it. I think augmented reality sound is a powerful thing. I think that the idea of haptics is going to be really interesting. I think the idea of the play between the spaces is going to be interesting too. The actual spaces themselves, and actually thinking in terms of larger areas and what that means in terms of play. There's a lot of possibilities there. And I don't know about smell around, but I want it someday. I don't know how we're going to get that, but some kind of because I'm really a big fan of olfactory. That'd be my wish.
Really cool what you guys are doing. How come we haven't seen any competition? There doesn't seem to be anybody else doing it or trying at all.
I think there is. I think it's there's rumblings, but I think the space wasn't proven until Pokemon. Honestly, ultimately, I think the idea that there was still this idea, and even me, I came from console. Where are games at? Games are in the couch. I mean, it actually started in the bedroom when you had your PC, and then it moved finally to the couch when you had the Sega Genesis. Now it's back to the bedroom with VR, but we won't get into that. That's another talk. But anyway, there's all these different places it's kind of moved out to, and we hadn't moved out into the real world a whole lot yet. VR back in the 90s tried, I don't know if you guys remember the VR locations, and then everybody realized I look stupid in a headset going like this in front of people, and so that went away. And I think that AR had just not been proven yet, and then the model's proven to some extent now, as long as you do things right. So it's not easy, and everything changes. The monetization changes. As you guys know, what worked 2 years ago doesn't work today for a lot of these companies. So you got to keep agile. You got to keep moving. I don't really have an answer for you. There's probably people in the audience here going, we're on it, but they're not talking about it yet.
Any advice for like smaller studios who wouldn't have their Pokemon IP or all that Google Maps data who would want to enter the space?
It's a good question. Ingress, we started lean and mean, honestly. Sure, we had Google at one point, but we didn't for a long time. And that had no IP, right? We just generated our own thing. And, the advice is back to what the core of this is. Get to the players. Get them socially organizing. Make them love whatever you do. Have the core mechanic mean something. And you know this is obvious stuff, right? This is game design 101. If the core compulsion loop isn't fun, I don't care what you put on top of it, it doesn't matter. But if you do have a really fun, simple idea, and it's organic to whatever location mechanic or mobile you're doing, then make the people care. And once you get them carrying, and they're showing up with flags and banners and their own T-shirts and their own tattoos, you're onto something. And you see it in, with Pokemon, I think it was also just this idea, this nostalgia. We thought, where the age range was much wider than we realized. And again, for the gameplay, my mother-in-law, 74, had never seen Pokemon in her life. But she loved the idea of going out and hunting for creatures in locations. Oh, it's a grass area. Oh, it's raining today. I'm going to go out. Somehow that just hit. So find that thing that just makes sense. It's not augmented reality gimmick. This makes sense for the augmented reality, right? I mean, Harry Potter, it makes sense. The hidden world, the magic world all around you, makes sense.
I don't know if you can share with us to what extent future versions will have characters who can actually interact with the physical objects in their environment.
Characters, you being the character, you mean? Or
well, no, I'm talking about Pokemon characters.
Oh, I see. Well, we can't talk features today, unfortunately, but no. Lots of things are happening. And the play space for augmented reality is changing for everybody. AR Kit and Core is allowed some lockdown stuff that couldn't be done before. And where we're going to the next stage of this, I think, is anybody's, guess. I'm always dreaming all the way to, I've got my dog following me around with me because it's fun, and it knows map data, and it understands exactly where it's at. And someday I think you're going to see magic like that. And magic it is, I believe. By the way, we're at Disneyland. I don't know if you guys think about this. I was talking to Lou. The Disney Imagineers were the first augmented reality guys. They said, hey, you know what? Here's this roller coaster, but let's make it a mountain. Let's augment this roller coaster and make this Matterhorn thing, and it's a bobsled. You're walking down a street, and here's Main Street, USA, and we're going to augment it so it looks exact, and it's super, super hyper reality of what it really is, right? It feels right. Those guys had it figured out. We're kind of at the mothership of where this was, where augmented reality, location augmented reality they were doing it with just real objects and real matter, and now we're talking about doing it with augmented matter and with virtual matter. But those guys had it right off the bat. Let's make this weird boat ride, but it goes through the jungle. And let's build this up to look like this augmented reality that really isn't here. What's this Goofy you guys walked around? That's an augmented reality character. Here's a guy walking around with a face on, and he's a goofy, creepy character, and this is like, kids are like, oh my God, right? That's an augmented moment for them. They've never seen Goofy walking around like that, half of them.
Well, it isn't just walking around, it's actually making you breakfast.
And they're making you breakfast, which is even better, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
so another question, just to follow on your question, is that in working with, in-game designs on a number of different platforms, it's often what the game designer doesn't do or the game does not do that is as important as what the game does do. And so I think Richard Dansky gave a wonderful talk at GDC about the player-shaped hole, right? So in his work on the Red Storm Tom Clancy games, he's sure to not, to leave a space for that player to be in. So to have a community on the couch, right? Or to have community, they care about your game, but they also, you want to be sure you leave space for them to self-express. So they design the flags. You don't just, give them little check boxes and stuff like that. So leading into my question would be coming from Uncharted, console space, core gameplay, what was the biggest shift? Because it's a very different space. How did you have to rethink games to be going to something that's a much more open world? Keeping it fun.
We were at at Naughty Dog. I remember sitting in a room with probably 12, 14 people at different levels. It was an expensive meeting. And for 2 hours, we were talking about Drake's eyelids, because Nathan Drake there were actually polygons that were interconnected and causing problems in some of the cutscenes. And we'd spent 2 hours on this instead of talking about gameplay. And I realized at that moment we'd kind of lost our way because we were so worried about the tyranny of the graphics that we weren't talking about the cover mechanics, which needed a lot of work. And this idea that we kind of went back to, I luckily grew up in a space where, when 2600 games, you didn't have a lot of graphics. You had to make it up in your head because the gameplay was so fun. We didn't have the power, so it had to be just fun, right? Well, weirdly enough, mobile's kind of back there again. All that stuff we learned in 2600 days and all that stuff that we learned slowly about, screen real estate and memory size and be able to visually show something. Miyamoto, he came up with his plumber because he had so few pixels to work with. He had to have the overalls the way he did because it had to be simple. Well, we're kind of back there sometimes, because no matter how you look at a screen mobile, it's hard. They're small characters. You've got to be very careful with your colors and with what you're doing with it. Your screen real estate is very limited on a mobile game. So in a weird way, I kind of went back to my roots, because a lot of the gameplay in the casual and mobile space requires you to go back to simple, cool gameplay without all the bells and whistles that we had on Uncharted. And Overwatch. You know, it was a lot of energy spent doing visuals for that. And I kind of like the fact that it starts core and then it kind of builds itself up. And again, the magic is people around you laughing and high-fiving each other because you just caught your first Pokemon Legendary. I mean, that is the magic. I don't know if you guys have seen that when a 6-year-old catches their first Legendary. It's special. It's really fun.
And I think we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Thank you, guys.
It was a wonderful talk.